Welcome to the Payments Leaders Summit podcast, where the brightest minds and trailblazers in the payments industry come together to share insights, strategies, and the latest innovations shaping the future of finance.
Arthur, thank you for joining us again. It's really nice to see you. If you could just introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about you and your role.
Yeah, of course. So, Arthur Bedel here. I'm with VGS, Director of Revenue for them. My role is very simple, leading strategic initiatives for the company with new merchants, which we call partners or existing partners, and driving more value for them.
Perfect. So there's a lot of talk about account-to-account payments over the last 2 days. And a lot of people are saying that here in the UK, the uptake has been slower than elsewhere in the world. We think of Ideal in the Netherlands, we think of VIPs in Scandinavia. What do you think is really needed to drive account-to-account payments or open banking for consumers and for the merchants?
Yeah, we've heard that a little bit. So I think, when you think about account-to-account, you think about open banking right now, right? Quite often. But for that, you need, in my opinion, more interoperability when it comes to data. So open banking is about sharing data across different banks. I don't think that the banking infrastructure and just ecosystem today has fully adopted that. Account to account is definitely going to be, in my opinion, the next big thing, but you also need kind of a user-friendly experience, right? And I don't see right now, Wero was talking about it, and EPI is, but I don't see in Europe and in the UK, which is still in Europe, right, but just not in European Union, a unified user experience leverageable across both the UK and potentially also Europe. Right, so that's something that I think is still missing, potentially going to come to the industry pretty soon. But for consumers, it's important. And then I think merchant initiatives, right? Like I think from a cost perspective right now, it does make sense. But I think because there's low adoption, they're not necessarily pushing it yet. Helping them identify new ways that they can create more adoption with their consumers, and for open banking providers or account-to-account providers and wallets to create more adoption with merchants by giving them better ideas around how they can monetize this specifically.
Okay, brilliant. This year, kind of more than ever, we've seen some issues with payments resilience, with outages, that's particularly been affecting kind of essential high street stores. So what do you think is needed at a firm level, but also from the payments ecosystem as a whole to kind of overcome some of these resilience issues?
So I think there's 3 ways of looking at it, right? The first way is, let's look at it from a digital perspective. I've still encountered and had conversation with companies, merchants in general, that believe that putting all of their eggs into one basket makes sense. I think it has for a long period of time because you were getting better pricing based on volumes, but you kind of also never had that complexity that we now have in the payment space, especially digitally. So based on this, I think we're still moving into that understanding that having multiple providers will not necessarily reduce your cost of payments, but introduce competition. So I think having that approach of multi-PSP setups, leveraging different rails, having not just credit cards, but also banking rails, potentially wallets and everything else is important, not to just have one payment method or simply one provider behind. So that's digitally. I think that we're seeing now finally a few companies that are finally introducing orchestration also at the the POS level. That's interesting. Some companies think it's the right thing to do, others are not. It's a little harder because the connection to terminals is needed, but I think that's something that will grow. And I think it's just also from a merchant perspective, not all merchants have, even in the luxury space, right, let's call it, the best understanding of how to manage frauds or have a payments team, right? Like that's not something that everybody has. Chief payments officers should be out there, not there yet, but hopefully they are soon. Once they start having a team, right, that's there, that can really focus on this, understand fraud, understand the business better, what it looks like from a payments perspective, then we'll see a reduction of fraud and we can have also more than one, hopefully, provider. One last piece on that for that aspect specifically, I personally think that the in-store experience is going to change over the next years.
Mm-hmm.
right or wrong, personal opinion, right? So don't quote me on this. But I think that payments, there's two ways to look at it in terms of the experience. The best experience you can have is an invisible one. And I think people are tired of waiting in line because you have to pay with the cashier, right? Or ultimately you go to a born and pay. Except for luxury experience, where I think we should really embellish that experience and make it more luxurious. But for every other type of experience, we should just create, especially in store, an experience where it's just you have your own wallet that you can leverage your app. You get whatever you want and you get out, right? Without having to go and pay specifically at a POS level. I don't know how far out that is. I don't know if it's even something that will happen, but I can see that happening. And that will impact, obviously, the broader, which is omni-channel. Mm-hmm. So once all of those things are put in place, then hopefully we have more redundancy in place and some more resilience.
So we're seeing a frictionless future, kind of.
I would love that to happen, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And you're quite well positioned to answer this. You're kind of French national, you're living in the US. What do you think that the UK specifically can learn from payment systems around the world?
So one that I really like is UPI.
Okay.
Right. I think they've done a great job because they've really brought interoperability across different banking infrastructures and created one unified experience. Mm-hmm. But that's seamless and that's instant. And I think that the UK needs to still think about Europe, right? Not just put themselves outside of it, mm-hmm. and create a unified experience for every country there, or be part of that. And so I think that real-time payments will keep moving forward. And if the UK is part of those initiatives that are also European as a whole, then we will have a country that's advancing in the payment landscape.
Brilliant. And then finally, what if you could apply the MPL to any aspects of your life other than the payment space, what would that be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Buy an app later outside of the payment space. Get your visa now and deal with all of that stuff later that you have to go through. That's probably what I would do.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.